So these are from the chairman's a publication, film publication, and little blurbs interview with George Lucas. Hope you enjoy them. I have them. Hey guys, it's Steph. Welcome back to the Cantina. Please pull up a bar stool. Today we're not going to do any rants because I just didn't feel like it, unless something really pisses me off, and then I might come back and scream and shout at the video again, at the video camera. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about how George Lucas cast Star Wars. And, you know, when a director, a producer, someone who's putting together a project like Star Wars, and they've conceived it for a while. I mean, it did, you know, Luke Skywalker just didn't appear in Lucas's mind like one morning and then he cast Mark Hamill. I mean, you've got to go through a process. How's he going to look? How's he going to be? Leia, the same thing. Han, the same thing. Now, so when you are doing that job, when you are the director, you are the producer, you have a type for each character. And I'm only going to do the big three, Han, Leia, and Luke. Because the older actors, it was obvious they were the only ones that could really do the part. You know, no one had ever conceived of Mark Hamill until, or Mark Hamill being Luke Skywalker, or Luke Skywalker, until George Lucas started thinking about him. Let's talk about this. For Mark Hamill, and Mark was up against quite a few other actors, and I can't remember quite a lot of their names. So someone who actually knows someone of who they were, you might want to PM me because I will love to hear about it. I'd love to hear more of the names. Mark, according to George Lucas, and if you look at the pictures I put it on the little slideshow of this article from Film Incorporated's Chairman's Choice, which is where this was discovered. Lucas had in mind a slightly naive, young 20-year-old, 19, young man who'd never really been anywhere, who was fun-loving, and Mark Hamill was chosen because he is, Luke Skywalker. I mean, that's where Lucas got the idea from. For Carrie Fisher, he didn't want to cast the irregular princess damsel in distress. And when you watch A New Hope, Leia, because the guys get them trapped, Leia has to take over her own rescue, which is nothing against the guys. I mean, there's no other way out. And, when you're in a situation like that, sometimes you don't think it slightly through, and Leia kind of understands that, so she kind of takes over her own rescue, and they go into the garbage chute. Well, you don't want to cast damsel in distress. You want Leia to be the typical, Rapunzel, let down your hair kind of thing. Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, what have you. Leia is tough. Leia, don't think would get where she got if she wasn't tough. And, he cast Carrie Fisher because Carrie Fisher fit that role perfectly. Now, let's talk about Harrison Ford. Lucas had directed him in American Graffiti. He played Bob Felfa, the drag racer, in American Graffiti. And what's really fascinating is Han Solo is supposed to be sarcastic, a cynic, sullen, sort of, world-weary and jaded. And funny enough, Harrison Ford fits all that to a T. I mean, the sullen and sensual hostility, those are the words that Lucas used for Harrison Ford. And I find it fascinating because it's the way he is. I mean, and casting him is hilarious because you had, we talked about this before. Burt Reynolds is up for the part. Christopher Walken. Kurt Russell would have been bad. But Ford got the part because he just is. He's handsome, he's dashing, but he's sullen and world weary and cynical. And I love that sensual hostility. I mean, that's Han to a T. That's Harrison Ford to a T. And it's kind of speaks of somebody who's not, you don't know his full story. You think you know who he is, and you really, really don't. And despite all of Disney's attempts at destroying the character, they don't have him, because, see, back then these characters had already existed in some form or another. Leia's extra toughness, her sensibility, her intelligence, her own daring, her own courage, a little bit more than what you would get in the princess in the tower being held by the Dark Lord, and who can't help herself. But she is still a type that has been talked about in Western literature and in cultures all over the place for decades. Then you've got, the young, idealistic, naive, fun-loving, young, very, very gauche hero in Luke Skywalker. And of course, Han Solo, the jaded, older, seen it all, done it all, knight, and armor's tarnished, the gunfighter, the classic cowboy type, American West, and yet he exists in other cultures as well, in their stories as well. And each of these actors, it was like, here's the thing. Something happened, and I don't know if it was kismet or fate, but when Lucas put this together, he got everything he wanted in the cast. They were perfect. You don't always get the perfect cast, and this is the difference between Diz Cannon's 3 and the actual true heroes of Star Wars, Luke, Han, and Leia. Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill. They had a chemistry. And I like to say there was a family feeling when you see them up there, even in A New Hope, when they're still trying to figure out who each other is. Leia, just looks at Han and doesn't understand him. He looks at her and thinks she's an idealistic little fool, but he cares. It's more of the fact that she gets him to care almost more than how Luke does it. Luke and Han are friends. Luke needs help. Luke always needs to get someone to help him get his butt out of the fire. And that's Han. Han takes over from Obi-Wan being Luke's protector in The Empire Strikes Back. The older brother, not really a mentor, but the more experienced older brother friend who can reach out and pull the young, idealistic fool out of the problems he got himself into. And they all play these characters perfectly. They were perfect together. And when you take them apart, it's not. See, here's the deal. The cast has to be as good as the story is, as good as the script is. And the director has to understand he needs that chemistry. And for 3 films, we had that chemistry. And you throw Lando Calrissian in, Billy D. Williams, and he was the 4th. The guy that came off as a bad guy who ended up redeeming himself and being the friend that he had to be. He had to redeem himself for what he did to Han. There's a great line in the radio play, The Empire Strikes Back, after Han knocks Lando on his ass in the cell, and Han said, something about, I used to be you. Han has learned, he's grown. He's still a cynic, he's still jaded, but the kid he used to be, the person that he wants to be, is there. And it takes Leia, mostly, and Luke to bring that out of him. And same thing with both Luke and Leia. These 3 without the other 2 are meaningless. They don't count. And that's where Disney got it wrong. They didn't respect that cast enough to understand that the three of them, they can stand strong singly, but the three of them together, and add Lando to it, are a powerhouse. The perfect cast. I don't think we will see a cast like that in another movie, because there's a magic there that you just can't capture anymore. And it's something that will stand the test of time. It's something that will always be there. You can't rewrite history when it's already been written. You can pretend it didn't happen, but it's always going to eventually come up through the sand, through the walls, through the TV screens, through the computers, up out of the water, to say we mattered, we were here, and we've done it. We are who we are, and and that perfection in that cast can't be taken away. And no matter how hard they try to recast, you can't recast those roles either. You can't. Soilo already proved it. The perfect cast comes once in a lifetime. George Lucas truly was blessed when he decided on those three, Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher, for his trilogy, for the first Star Wars movies. Because when all is said and done, they will always stand head and shoulders over everything else as the three actors, the three characters who made Star Wars what it was. And it doesn't happen often. It doesn't happen often. So we should look at the roles they played in these movies, how they played those roles, as something to be studied and looked at, learned by people who do film, who tell stories, who understand that the cast matters as much as the story. And when you don't cast people who are perfect for the role, you're not going to have a good movie. And if anything, Soilo proved it. All right, you can't recast Harrison Ford as Han Solo. You just can't. And you can't cast anybody but Carrie Fisher as Leia, and you can't cast anybody but Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. And because they were perfection itself. Together, they were unbeatable. George Lucas, again, the master taught us how. Okay, so this is an ode to the cast, an ode to George Lucas, and how great the original Star Wars really was. And it wasn't just the story, the script, the director, it was the cast. Because ultimately, your actors have to tell the story. And if they're not good, and if they're not perfect, it's not going to matter. But this cast was. So this is Steph, signing out. I'll see you around the galaxy, I'll see you around the cantina. Please remember to tip those Wookiee bartenders 20%, and don't start any fights in the cantina because the Wookiees will go after you. And I mean the bouncers, who are huge. And no gunplay in the cantina, you take that shit out in the street. No droids, no bounty hunters. I'll see you around this galaxy, scoundrels.